Hello, everyone. So today's notes are going to be over multiplying and dividing integers. The other day we talked about combining integers, which was adding and subtracting. Now, before we get started, we need to note that there are different ways that we see multiplication and division. So in 5th grade, you're probably used to seeing this right here for multiplication using the X as multiplication symbol. Now I'm going to tell you, in 6th grade, we kind of want to move away from that, okay? We're going to want to focus on these symbols here, using parentheses and the little dot. The reason we're not going to want to use the X later on is when we get into our algebra unit, it's going to be a little bit confusing. So know that when you see a number in front of the parentheses like this, that means multiplication. Now division probably looks a little more familiar. These two signs are what you've seen nonstop. You've also seen this right here, okay, x over y. This looks like a fraction. What we're going to learn this year is that fractions are just another division problem. Now, we have some rules we're going to follow for multiplication and division. We're going to use what is called, well, it's not called this. There's really no official name, but my students, my first year teaching here, called it the integer goblin, because once you set it up, it looks like a little face, and they got creative with their drawing. So if you hear integer goblin, that's what I'm referring to. You can call it math circle, whatever is better for you. Now, something you're going to want to write down is if we have the same signs, our answer will be positive. If we have different signs, we're going to have a negative answer. Now, let's talk about how our little goblin here works. If I have the problem of -3 times -3, the first thing you need to figure out is, what is my sign going to be? Well, I see my first number here is a negative, so I'm going to fill in one of the negative spots. I see my second number is also a negative, so I'm going to fill that in as well. And I'm left over with a positive. So that tells me my final answer will be a positive number. And then all I have to do is multiply. 3 times 3 gives me 9. So the only step that's changing when it comes to multiplication and division is figuring out your sign. Now, you may ask, well, how do you use this for division? Well, it's going to be the same process, okay? I'm going to set up my little goblin every single time. And then let's say I have -2 divided by 1. Look at your signs. So I see -2 is negative, so I'm going to fill that in. 1 is positive, so I'm going to fill that in. What is left over is a negative, so my final answer has to be a negative. And then I just divide. 2 divided by 1 gives me 2. So my final answer is -2. So if I were to ask you, if I multiply a negative by a negative, the answer will be, you can pause this. All right, so hopefully for this problem, you set up your goblin and ask yourself, a negative by a negative should give me a positive answer. If it doesn't, that means we messed up somewhere. So if I divide a positive by a negative, the answer will be, so let's see, positive divided by a negative. I have a negative left over, so a negative is my final answer. All right, so here are some example problems I want you to try on your own. You can pause the video before we go over the answers. All right, so hopefully you paused and didn't just keep having the video playing. So number 1, first thing I want to do is figure out my sign. So I see a positive, So I'll fill in my positive. I see a negative, I'll fill that in. So that tells me my final answer has to be negative. And then I just multiply 5 times 2, which is 10. So negative 10 is my answer. All right, number 2. I see I have a negative times a negative. So my final answer has to be a positive. So that should just give me 3. Number 3, I see I have a positive divided by a negative. So my final answer will be negative. And then I just divide 44 divided by 2. So my final answer should be negative 22. And the last one's not showing up, so let me fix that for y'all. I just realized that. So the last problem should be negative 55 divided by 5. Let's take a moment, try that one on your own. All right, so if you just tried this one on your own, you see we have a negative divided by a positive. So my final answer should be a negative, and it'll be negative 11. Now the question got asked, well, what do I do with my positives? So say I have 2 positives, so 2 times 2. That process is not going to change. It's just when we have negatives that we're going to have to change things up. All right, so let's talk about your homework assignment that will be due by the next class. So if you scroll down, all right, your homework is going to be multiplying and dividing integers. I would recommend probably doing this, or to do this, I would get a piece of paper, write down the problems, and solve on your own. Okay, remember, if you're going to submit it, all right, you would have to do this all in one sitting. You can't save and come back. That's why I would recommend doing it on a separate piece of paper first. Okay, if y'all have any questions, make sure y'all contact your teacher, all right, for any help.